Hi there, and welcome to Considering Comic Books. This week we're here with a good friend of mine, Aaron Flanagan. He runs the super successful store Comic Book Guys in Belfast City Centre, and he's also even had his own comic book out, The Revenant. He's a great guy, and we got together this week to have a chat about his interest in comics, what got him into it, what made him open his own shop, that sort of thing. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it and have a chat with Aaron. Aaron, how's it going, man?
Good, Mark. Thank you very much. You're far too kind. I think you said super successful there, did you? No, thank you very much. It's good to be on the show, and it's a great show. I've listened to a couple of it now, so I'm looking forward to getting talking about all things comics this week.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're doing this, as anybody who's been on the podcast knows, I do this very lo-fi, i.e. I show up with my phone and we record something. So the first time I got the idea to do this, I was actually out for coffee with Glenn Fabry. He's the best known for his Preacher cover art. And we just on the fly decided to do it. Now, there's a part of me that wants to be like, "Ooh, let's make this the Joe Rogan, of comics podcasts or vlogs or whatever." But at the minute, it's literally me running around with a phone.
It actually is for the people who can't see. Mark's just holding his phone up to my mouth right now. Showbiz.
I know, man. This is you've hit the big time whenever you're on my podcast, but. So, what got you into comics, man? What was it?
To be honest, when I was I suppose my origin story with comics, when I was young, my dad very quickly realised it's not that I couldn't read, my attention span for reading novels and books was terrible. When I was 5 and 6, trying to get me to read anything was a nightmare. So what he did was he said to me, he was always a big comic book fan. He had read comics from he was no age. So he said, let's try Aaron out with a few comic books to see if the pictures, with the words would help him sort of take the reading. So he did. He gave me a Spider-Man comic when I was 5, and it was the best thing since sliced bread. When I picked it up, I automatically got stuck straight into it. Now, I don't remember reading the story too much. I just remember looking through the pictures and making my own story up at that age, in my head, based on the pictures. But it was clearly a way my dad tried to get me to read more. Yeah. And to be honest, it worked perfectly. It was my early start into reading anything, and that's what I continue to read from there on in.
That's really fascinating. And I mean, you've hit on something as well, because, young men, their reading literacy is actually very down at the minute. Ooh. And for me personally, I always found that comic books... Now, I was actually quite literary oriented whenever I was a kid. Obviously, I was interested. I would later sort of go on to want to write my own books and things like that. So I was always that way oriented. But my brother has dyslexia, and he really enjoyed whenever I would give him comics and stuff. And it's the fact that it's got more visual stimulus, because it can sort of drag in and make you more interested. And I remember what got me into comics, similar to you. I started off reading stuff like the Dandy and the Beano, but as an older sort of pre-teen, I would come across stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 2000 AD, and it was the artwork, which just blew my mind, especially 2000 AD. I remember seeing art in there and thinking, like, this is some of the most amazing stuff I've ever seen. And they still actually maintain that standard today. They've got some great guys working for them,
I think that's the thing, for both of us, obviously growing up with comics, yes, we've noticed the progression through comics, in all different forms, but, the power and the importance of them has never waned for me anyway, because I see how it helped me as a young kid read and, thrive, really, because it helped me cope at a time when I sort of thought, am I a bit strange and I'm not reading anything, and all my mates are, being able to do all these things. So it really helped me thrive at that time, and I can see now when young kids come in here, a lot of parents will tell me similar stories, and it just shows that it's a great device to get people into reading. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, do you find as well that whenever you were getting into it, it was, it may have started sort of as a coping mechanism for learning how to read, sure, but as you were drawn into that culture, do you feel that the culture behind it sucked you in as well. The fact that you could sort of, I know it's kind of, especially whenever we started, it was a lot less accessible.
Yeah.
But
it was.
you could go to comic shops and talk to people and get recommendations.
Yeah, I think certainly not when I was 5 or 6, but as I got a bit older after that, it was comics I used as a bit of an escape. As much as I loved school, and I absolutely loved secondary school. Primary school was a difficult time for me because my mum took very, very sick when I was in primary school, and comics I used pretty much at the time as an escape route from reality for a while, because I seen all of these superheroes in the pages who were saving people's lives, and I just wanted my mum to be okay. So I sort of thought this is a great way for me to escape, and getting to go into comic shops. Although there wasn't many of them back when I was young, it was great to go in and talk to people like John and stuff who would give you a recommendation and say, give this a go, and because it was like-minded people.
That's John McMahon, right? At Talisman, and then later Forbidden Planet. Yeah, I mean, I remember it well, and you've hit on something that I think a lot of comic fans, especially from our era, were connected with, and it was escapism. I remember whenever I was a kid, I had a difficult time of things. I was sort of maladjusted and had a lot of problems, and for me, comic books was definitely somewhere that I could retreat into. It was, definitely an outlet for a lot of sort of difficult stuff I was going through as a teenager, and talking to people in comic shops as well, especially if you're socially awkward, meeting other people, it was a way to actually socialize. And it was, well, I guess you hear the term bandied around a lot nowadays, safe space, but it really was a safe space for nerds, you know?
I mean, I would say that even our shop now, as much as comics and the culture has come on from comics in terms of it being far more accepted now than it ever was, I think that our shop still provides a place for like-minded folk to come in and talk and get that 15 minutes of a safe place where everybody is on the same wavelength. It does, and I know because I can tell from the people who are in here, the regular customers, the new faces, they love coming in for that feeling that they're in a place that they know, but also that they know they're going to be welcomed and accepted. You know.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, and it's actually what made me want to come in here, and it's because as you know, I worked in a comic book shop whenever I was younger, and one of the things I loved about it was that you would get people coming in, and you would have recommendations, and you would socialize. So it was like a way to socialize. Now, one thing that pardon me. One thing that people take for granted now that they've sort of forgotten about, and that is that being a nerd used to be it was you were socially ostracized, and
it's not anymore. It's a cool thing to be a nerd now, Mark, isn't it?
It's very cool. We were actually standing at the front of the shop earlier, and we saw a guy going past in a Superman t-shirt, and we were like, oh, I wonder if he's going to come in. But, obviously he didn't, because the Superman t-shirt's a fashion statement now. But the point is that whenever we were coming up, it was not cool, and it was this was somewhere where if you were a vulnerable sort of person, you could come and socialize and talk about comics. And you've recreated that here, which is what drew me in, because I came in, and having come in, I found that there's people and they want to talk about comics. They want to talk about what they're interested in, give recommendations, things like that,
Well, you're very kind. I mean, one of the most important things when we were coming up with the idea for the shop was to create more than a shop. It was to create a space for like-minded folk to talk about comics, to create comics, to sell comics, to buy comics, to do everything that the comic world is and should be. There's far too many places that I see when I'm abroad, or even where they're just, it's like walking into a Tesco's or any place like that, and
sanitized.
And that's not what I wanted to have here. I wanted somewhere where people, as I say, could come for a 15-minute chat, talk about their comics, give me recommendations. As much as I read comics on a daily basis, I love to hear what other people are reading, and they give me good things, but it is somewhere where we've created what I would say as a community, and I think we've got the community nature now back in Belfast, which is very, very important.
I totally agree with you, and I think what you're doing here is I think it's fantastic, because like one thing I'll say is, online is brilliant because it means that you've got access to, millions of different people and their views, etc., etc. But it's also very easy to be a dick online, and it's very easy for context to be lost online.
Yeah.
Whereas whenever you're standing talking to someone and they're right in front of you, and say maybe you're not interested in the comics they're reading, well, I mean, don't get me wrong, in the hardcore nerd contingent, you do have a high precedence of autism. So I'm not going to lie, there are people who I've been talking to and they've said, straight up to my face, oh, what you're reading is shit. And they've said it in a manner that is kind of unforgiving and just blatantly honest. And I think that's maybe due to their own level of autism. But online, it can be really, really harsh.
Yeah, it can be misconstrued.
Yeah, it can be misconstrued. But majority of the time, whenever you're talking to people face to face, there's not that, the etiquette is there. So you're, being nasty to someone isn't an option because it's,
I mean, as you say, people will certainly. I mean, there's a couple of customers who love seeing what my weekly reads are. So on a Wednesday, I would show them. And you're right, there are certainly customers who would come up to me and just blatantly say, "Oh, why are you reading this shit?" And it's like, it's something I quite like, but you take that and then. But I can't really turn around and say, "Well, why are you reading that shit?" Because some of the, everybody has their own taste. It's how you put it across. Now, in a comic book shop, it's good that people can feel open enough to say things like that because
totally.
I'm glad that people will completely down whatever I'm reading, but as you say, online it can be completely misconstrued, and if somebody said that to me on, say, Facebook or Twitter, I'd be very offended. Having the face-to-face contact is very, very easy to go, oh, they're only joking, or else they're having a bit of fun, they're throwing a jibe in. But online, if you said that to me online, or if that was said to one of my customers, you'd think, God, they're being awfully harsh. What's that about?
It's the context, isn't it? It's the context because, well, it's like I always prefer to, if I can, whenever I'm getting critiqued for things, I always prefer to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Because whenever they go, Mark, that's shit, you need to fix it, or I can tell the context in their voice. Whereas if you read it as a text, it's just, Mark, that is shit.
Yeah.
You need to fix it. And you're like, what?
Well, what have I done wrong?
You cheeky asshole, you know what I mean? So the context is lost.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Everyone can come in and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And also, I think, the best thing about, working in a comic shop as well, is it really is the ground zero of pop culture. You get to see what's going on, what's going to be made into movies later on, what's popular, what people are connecting to.
It is one of the things that maybe now more than ever before, I didn't really think about it before I opened the shop, but the amount of stuff that we get to see, read, love and enjoy long before it becomes a film or long before it becomes a TV show. As you say, we're in a ground zero. I mean, you take things like Injection. That's the story about Declan Shalvey, Geordie and Warren Ellis.
Yeah.
Now, we had them in for a signing about 2.5 years ago for the launch of Injection, and we were very lucky to them because they're huge stars.
Very big money.
And at the time we thought Injection sounds like it's a great story. Now we read it. It was a brilliant sort of Walking Dead-ish apocalyptic idea, but it was fantastic and I remember loving it. Now this year, it's just recently, in fact in the last 2 weeks, got optioned for a TV show. I think AMC have picked it up or something like that. And it's great, as you say, that we're at that ground level of not only getting to read them and enjoy them, but to have these people and creators in the store talking about where they come up with a concept. And it's fascinating.
And you've spoken to me about, you've had Declan Shalvey down before, and what I find interesting about this guy is he loves comics as well. So it's
he knows his stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see, comic creators who are deeply passionate. It's not just the job, but they're also passionate about the medium.
God, aye.
And so, yeah, I mean,
you see, when he was down last time, he spoke with more passion about getting to draw the Punisher than I've ever heard anybody.
Yeah.
So a character he loved, and the fact that he was getting to draw him, he was telling me how much that it meant to him, and it's lovely to hear because, as you say, it's not just a job for him. He's not just going. So he's not getting a thing from Marvel saying draw the Punisher standing in this pose. He's getting to do his own thing, and it's phenomenal to hear these superstars how much passion they have for it. And it wears off and it rubs off on all of us.
Well, you see, that's the thing. That's the one thing I've always said about whenever there's a comic creator that is clearly as passionate as the fans are about the source material, then it really invests you in the character.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember whenever I was reading Joe Straczynski's Spider-Man, his Amazing Spider-Man, and he was doing that with John Romita Jr. I'm actually rereading it at the minute, but you could tell that there was, I remember reading interviews with him, and you could tell that there was this extraordinary passion for the character that translated, and you can see that in any of the great runs on things like, you go and look at Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil, you go and look at, Frank Miller's run on, Batman. Just
Adams' run on Green Arrow with the traveling heroes and stuff.
Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil, wasn't it? Yeah, and I mean that stuff. It was just, it was beautiful to look at. Sensational artwork, but the stories were clearly written by people who had a deep reverence for the material.
Yeah.
Another one as well, actually, and I don't even know whether this is just Dan Abnett's really good, or he is, he actually was a fan of the material. But I remember he did Legion. And it was one of my favourite runs on Legion ever.
Yeah,
Legion Lost.
Legion Lost, that's right.
It's phenomenal. It took that whole Star Trek Voyager idea and transported these Legionnaires to a lost galaxy, and they had to make their way back. It was really, really good.
That was the 90s at their best. That was.
Mate, it really was. You were talking about I can't remember, I think it was Oliver Coipel who was doing the art.
That's right.
A young Oliver Coipel, and I remember thinking this guy's going to be big, and now he's working with Mark Miller on the Magic Order.
The Magic Order.
Yeah,
that's right.
But issue 1 was out the other week, and it's again Mark Miller's the man with the magic formula. He just can't seem to write anything that I don't instantly like.
As soon as his pen touches the paper, it's gold.
It's gold dust. And he's another guy who I interviewed him maybe about 2 years ago for Following the Nerd. Mark Savage, who was on the other week there, I interviewed him, and he is a really nice, down to earth guy, and again just wants to make really good comics that people love. Yeah, so anyway, we've talked about the impact of the comic shop, and we've talked about what you got into comics. What made you decide to make the leap and open a shop? It's a big risk.
It was. I mean, at the time, we've been open for now over 4 years. It's fantastic to think that it's flown by. But when me and my brother came up with the idea, it was more about creating a place that there wasn't anywhere else like in Belfast.
Yeah.
Because me and Austin had got a wee bit. I suppose, we didn't get disinterested in comic books, but we felt there wasn't a place that we wanted to go to buy our comics.
Yeah, sure.
We were buying them religiously in Dark Horizons and Talisman back in the day. But after those sort of shops went, there became really no place for us anymore, to the type of shop that we liked going. So what we did, we switched to online for a while. And I'll be honest, yes, online can be cheap sometimes, and, it's getting delivered straight to your door. I understand the benefits to it. But it's a bit faceless.
Yeah, I agree.
I love, one of my favourite things about comic shops, and it will always remain the same, even when I'm buying in comics, is hunting through boxes.
Yes.
You can't hunt through pages on eBay. It's just not the same. So me and Austin decided to come up with an idea of a shop that reminded us of the old days of comics, but in a new, modern way. So we put a modern twist on it. And to be honest, yes, it was a huge risk. I mean, I was in a pretty really good job at the time. I was working for an EPOS company as their marketing manager, and it was based on the degree that I got in university. I got a marketing degree. I became the marketing manager of this company, so everything looked like it was going well. It was going in the right direction. But as good as it was, and as well paid as it was, I wasn't going home every night thinking this is what I want to do in life.
It's not what you wanted to do.
So that's what really made us take the leap. And I was very lucky that my partner Kira at the time, she was very understanding, and she said, you should just go for it.
Well, Kira's actually into comics in a big way, isn't she? Did you tell me Moon Knight was her thing?
Moon Knight's Kira's thing. And the great thing about Kira is she's been into comics probably as long as I have, and it's one of the things I suppose that that brought us together. That mutual love of comics. It's going to sound crazy, for a period of from 5 right through to I was 15, comics were my life. That's what I would have every week religiously went out and bought them. And when I hit 15, life changed a wee bit. Girls became the first thought in my mind, and the comics took a wee bit of a back seat for a couple of years. Now, when I met Kira, when I was 17, I very, very quickly got settled, with Kira, and the love of comics came right back to me because I seen her reading the Moon Knight comic. And the year after that, we ended up going to San Diego Comic Con, and that really, it was still in the early enough days. It was 2000, I think we went. So it was still or 2000, whatever it was still early days for Comic Cons because they weren't the pop culture cons they are now. They were an actual comic convention at the time. Right. So it was fantastic to get to go and experience that with somebody who loved comics as much as I did.
So her love of comics in a way sort of allowed you to be more yourself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, like we were saying earlier, there really was a stigma against having. I mean, I remember whenever the hormones hit me, and you know, faced with the idea of years of virginal misery, or hiding your comic books under the bed. You were sort of like, you know, I'm gonna have to work out what to do here. And I remember for a period of time I stopped reading comics, and action figures, which would be, you know, a big passion for me in later life. And it was actually my partner, my wife now, and I remember her saying, you know, I don't mind you putting them on display or your comics lying around or whatever, because that's it's a big part of you. And now she totally regrets that, because, you know, the Incredible Hulk's holding the toilet roll in the toilet and stuff, and, you know, I've got a toy room, and you know, she's like, what did I unleash? But, you know, this is the thing, it's a big part of a personality, isn't it great that nowadays, you know, you can be so much more frank about it.
I think that's the biggest sea change I've noticed, even in the last 4 years of having the shop. I've noticed progress much quicker than anything else. Exponentially, it's grown, is the acceptance of pop culture, you know, and comic culture, you know. Because as you say, when we were in school, a lot of my mates, even from school days, would come in here now and go, I never even knew you liked comics in school. Because you just didn't talk about it. You know, if I on non-uniform days, I would have been wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt under a big leather jacket and covered it over most of the day. You know, and whereas nowadays, as you say, you see people walking about with Spider-Man t-shirts who are wearing it for it's a pop culture statement that they're making, which is fantastic. It is also, yes, you know, it's making the comic culture now. Some elements of it a little bit annoyed that it's taken their love of a thing, you know.
Yeah, I know. I funny, we were talking about this earlier, and I talked about it with Mark Savage last week as well, and it was the appropriation of nerd culture by normies, which sort of has happened, you know. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, the vastly uncool people, like, you know, me, I include myself in the mix here, who were into comics. And had always been into comics, and it was kind of like our safe space. Are now we haven't got any cooler.
No,
you know, it's like if you watch The Big Bang Theory and
got smaller, fatter, and hairier.
but you know, I mean, if you say you watch The Big Bang Theory and everybody has a chuckle at Sheldon and, you know, I can't remember the names, the rest of the characters.
Leonard and Stuart, all those ones.
You have a chuckle at them, but you know, people have not accepted them anymore, and they don't think they're any cooler than they were last time. It's just that their culture has been accepted, so the nerds haven't been accepted, the culture has, and you see this happening sort of more and more, and it's something I worry about, because, you know, I see people saying, you know, well, you know, these modern creators who've got in, and maybe they are your sort of secondary, tertiary sort of pop culture fan, and they got in whenever it was sort of cool to come in, and they're like, who are all these, you know, these weird, you know, socially awkward people who are complaining because, you know, I didn't adhere to continuity, and I'm like, no, those guys are your fan base. You know, those are the guys who were sort of there from the start, and
they'll be the ones who continue the market growing for forever.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, pedantic, you know, socially awkward people, like I mean, like I say, I include myself in this. We're like the I'd say we are the foundation of that industry, and we know, because, you know, because you're in here all the time, and
you've worked in it too, Mark.
It composes the majority of your customer base. You know, there is a new cool crowd here, like, you know, oh, we're into comics now, and it's acceptable to be, but the socially awkward guys who were there for decades before, they do compose the majority of the fan base. And, you know, as much as it's not cool, and you mightn't like it, and people might be like, well, comics has to move on now, but these guys are always going to be here because as a comic fan, I'm always going to be here.
Yeah.
And I am one of those guys.
Yeah, and the medium will only exist for as long as these guys and girls do. Because
that's right. Well,
those are the ones who are coming in. Who are dropping. Say £70-80 a week, on 25 or 30 comics.
Yep.
Yes, there are. Of course, I love that the mass market are now open to shops like us because we'll get young ones in, we'll get older ones in, we'll get people of all ages, all sexes who will come in and pick up one or two comics in a blue moon.
Yeah.
But those as whilst they are great at keeping shops alive, it won't necessarily keep the industry alive, having one or two people who won't read recurring.
Oh no, totally. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said guys and girls, because I was just saying guys there out of habit, but that's another thing about the nerd fandom, and that is that it has always been inclusive.
Oh God,
it's always been inclusive, and you only need to look at bigger sort of fandoms like Star Trek.
Yeah.
To see that
Star Trek was a pioneer.
Yeah, nerds want other people to enjoy their culture.
100%. I mean, comics are for everyone. There is this, I know there's this notion. A lot of people. It actually annoys me, I have to say, when people who maybe have never been in a comic shop, when they walk in, sometimes the first thing they go is, "Oh, this is just a boys' shop," and you're like, "No, it's definitely not just a boys' shop." That's an antiquated view on comic books and comic book culture. I would say in here, the demographic, I get 60% guys and about 45% girls. So it's very, very well balanced in here. And I think that is a sign of how sort of popular comics are on the whole. It's not just geared at one audience.
Well, I think for girls especially, being into comics, decades ago, would have been especially uncool. It was it was more. I remember Pat Mills talking about how women writers weren't interested in writing for Misty or Bunty because they wanted to work for the glossy magazines.
Yeah,
and that was very much it was what female reading material was geared towards at the time too. So I think it's now become very socially acceptable for girls to come in and enjoy comics too, which is great because my wife, she, I gave her Brian Azzarello's Wonder Woman run, and that really sparked her love of the character. And she loves the Gal Gadot movie. She's a massive Wonder Woman fan, right, to the point where she's done all her research into the William Moulton Marston and his wife and their lover and the whole sort of interest and origin of Wonder Woman. So that became something she was able to connect with and get very interested in. And I love to see it. I just love to see new people coming in and finding something that they love and enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it, and I am very grateful of it as a shop, but more as a lover of the medium, is a lot of people would maybe argue this point. You might even argue it, I don't know more. I think the films and the franchises of these films have really opened the door for comic shops.
Yeah.
And it's getting a market who would never even think of walking through these doors to come in and try out the medium. And that's all completely all inclusive. Everybody goes to the cinema, everybody watches TV, everybody watches films. So by using characters and utilising characters that were first created in comic books has really opened the door up to everybody coming in here.
Yeah, and I think it's then on the companies to make sure that they have product that will reflect what what the people just saw. So you want to come in then and just be bamboozled by these titles that are gonna draw you in of your favorite heroes, etc., etc. So
as long as the films that they're producing are good content.
Exactly. And I think you have to look at the efforts that have been made by these big studios, because I mean this is the thing. A lot of people complain about comics at the minute, and there's a lot of. I know that there was a huge kickback against some of the legacy characters from Marvel and stuff, but one thing I've noticed consistently with the studios is that whenever something comes out, the comic book end picks up what they're seeing in the shops. So
I mean, the prime example of that recently is one you've been reading, Mark, is Infinity.
And it was really, really well timed to come out with the Infinity movie. And some people apparently hate it, but I've really been enjoying it. I think Jerry Duggan's doing a great job. And all the tie-in stuff I've even been reading. Like, I mean, before event saturation kicked in, I was a real big advocate of the Marvel event. I loved whenever they did an event, you know, whether it be Bendis, Secret Wars or whatever, I was all in. But it just, event saturation would sort of take over for a couple of years, and they were having like 3 or 4 events a year.
Yeah.
It was just, everything was an event and it was all tied in.
Yeah.
But I think Infinity is doing a good job, and you know, it's got Jerry Duggan and Aaron Cooter on the main line. You've got Mike Deodato Jr.
Yeah.
He's on, I think it's Infinity Countdown. And his stuff's just superb. So, I mean, right now I think they're doing a really good job. And, you know, I think with the Justice League movie coming out, I think, you know, DC did a good job too. And
yeah. I think that as long as they're given jumping on points really for new readers that say, for example, as you say, somebody's just went to the cinema and seen Infinity, or they've went to the cinema and seen Justice League, or whatever it might be, or Wonder Woman. So long as that they're sort of semi-tandem, not necessarily. I still maintain, and for as long as as comics are around, comics should be what influences the movies. It should never be the other way around.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just, it would be crazy to start basing comic books solely on the movies, but that's for another time. But I think the very, very important thing that the big companies need to do is have a jumping on point for new readers after a big film's released. You know, they're doing it. The prime example, Marvel are phenomenal at doing it. You know, as soon as Lando Star Wars was out there, the week after Lando, the comic series started with Donald Glover on the front cover, and they are phenomenal at tying stuff like that in.
One thing, I've heard a lot of detractors talk about this, so I mean, I don't want to dodge this bullet because people all sort of call us on it, but there was a lot of kickback about the legacy characters like Riri Williams or Amadeus Cho as Hulk. Then you had Jane Foster as Thor, stuff like that. Now, I didn't read any of these titles. They didn't appeal to me, and I don't think they were aimed at me. And a lot of people were saying stuff like, you know, oh, well, the movies are coming out and people aren't able to walk into the store and get a Bruce Banner Hulk or, you know, a Steve Rogers Captain America because Sam Wilson was inhabiting the role, you know. So, I mean, do you think Marvel dropped the ball there, or do you think that was a grand experiment that they had to try and had to sort of, because I realised what they were doing. They were reaching for a broader demographic. Yeah. And
I'll be honest, some of those stories are not for me. They're a bit like you. It's not targeted for me. Yes, now, some of them, even the likes of the Jane Foster Thor one, it was Jason Aaron doing that, and I absolutely loved that one.
Did you read that? Because I didn't read it, and it you know, again, it had, I can't even remember who was doing the artwork, but I remember I thought the artwork was stunning, but it just wasn't really targeted for me.
And it certainly wasn't targeted for me. I just happened to really stumble on it because I remember at the time there was a lot of fuss being made about it. And as a comic store owner, you have to stay on trend and up to date with what's going on. So there's some stuff I have to read that might not be my cup of tea, but in the end that works out okay because I'll either really, really enjoy it or possibly hate it, but no matter, I still have to keep up to date with a lot of stuff. Now, I don't read everything, it's physically impossible, but I think, to answer the question, Marvel did it as a test to try to expand to a broader audience. I don't think they all worked. In fact, they didn't all work. They're having to go through a reboot now, and instead of creating, taking over existing characters, I have always said, and I will maintain this, they should create new characters for these people. They shouldn't go over existing characters. People love Tony Stark because he's an arrogant shit, because of who he is. They shouldn't have to change Tony. Give Riri Ironheart, give her own character that's not on the Iron Man title. Well, and that's what they should be doing.
I totally agree, because I remember whenever I was reading Matt Fraction's Iron Man run, and Pepper Potts had she had an armor called Rescue.
That's right.
And I was like, that's great. I would read a series about this. And I think subsequently they put one out, and I did read it. So, I think creating new characters instead of going over the old ones, it's just that
introduce them in the main runs for
sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Give them a place, an introduction. Now with the Thor one's slightly different because obviously, and not to spoil the story, but Jane is going through a troubled time in her life in it, and in order for her to continue her life, she needs to become the female Thor. So I understand why they use that in that story, that concept. But certainly with other characters, they do not need to overtake a title with a new character. What they need to do is introduce it into the existing title and then give them a run of their own. Try it out.
I think the difference between Marvel and DC there is that Marvel actually they push it as part of their marketing, whereas DC just don't talk about it and they seamlessly integrate characters, because I've noticed whenever Marvel didn't push it, like I loved the Young Avengers. Whenever it first came out, it had two gay characters, Hulkling and Wiccan, and that came out organically in the run, but it wasn't being pushed as, hey, look what we're doing, check us out, we're making a statement, we're trying to draw people in. It was very organically done, and I feel those two characters, they really stand up on their own merit. It's the same with DC and their any sort of diverse inclusions that they make in their line. If you read the current, it's the new characters they're putting out at the minute. One of them's Silencer, Dan Abnett again. She's I can't remember what her actual ethnicity is, but it just wasn't talked about. And she was just put out, and she is a seamlessly good character. You know what I mean?
That's the thing, when they're not actively promoting something to be positively biased or
positive bias.
It's far superior, because they don't need to talk about it.
They just need to make good
characters. It doesn't matter who the character is, what the character is. If the character's good, that's what matters, and that's what comic book fans want. They just want a character that they can relate to and that they find loving.
And this is what comes back to what we said earlier. The comic books is just a really naturally inclusive and diverse field. Anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, whether you're what your religion is, what your sex is, what weight you are, how much body hair you have.
For sure.
It honestly does not matter. Comics is a naturally very inclusive and diverse medium. And I guess there's been this idea in modernity that there's toxic fandoms and stuff like that. But I mean, with the exception of people, I think there could be 8 people talking shit online, and it seems like it's hundreds. And I think a few bad apples have sort of
they've ruined the tree.
They've given everybody else a bit of a bad name. But I anything I've ever found in fandom is that it's just a really, you're obviously going to run into dickheads from time to time, but it's a really great, coming in here and talking shit to people and, talking about comic books. It's just a really great place to come and hang out, and you will be accepted.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we're all about.
Well, I mean, that's fantastic. So, I guess we'll wrap this up, because you've got to get on with your day. We actually just had a guy walk in there looking for change, so I had to stop and start the
change
podcast.
And a massage.
And
he wasn't getting either from here.
No. He was looking at me like he wanted a happy ending. But well, I guess we'll wrap up here. But before I go, I'm gonna quickly ask you, what are you reading at the minute? What are you enjoying?
God. But as I said earlier, I try to read every big Marvel and DC title. But my likes have has changed very much since I opened the shop. So I'm reading a lot more independent comics. So Image books are the things I'm really focusing on now. Things like Infidel, it's something we've talked about. Listen,
Infidel gets I know a lot of the Comics Geek crowd love to say it's an SJW title. I think it has it has characters who are, how would you say, they fit the social justice mold. They're sort of diverse activist-y types, but I gotta say they're well-written characters, and I am loving the book. I think it's one of the best horror books I've read in a long time.
Things like that. Gideon Falls. Oblivion Song I'm getting into. I've only read an issue or so.
I haven't read any of it.
It's going okay, but the best title I've read probably in the space of a year or two, it was one that I've got sent as a sample, is John McCrae's Dead Rabbit. It's been very, very good. It's another Image title. John's done things like Mythic.
It's Jerry Duggan again.
Jerry Duggan as well.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, Jerry Duggan. I'm reading Analog.
Analog's brilliant. That's how did I forget? Analog's been brilliant as well.
Analog.
You notice the recurring theme with all of these Image independent books now. A lot of them are getting picked up for TV shows and films.
And that's what we've been saying. It's the ground zero for pop culture.
You think it was 7-8 weeks ago, maybe a wee bit longer, I first put Infidel into your box. And within the space of 2 issues, it was options TV show or movie. It's crazy to think how quick it happens now.
Well, this is the thing now. You see, like big houses like Netflix. They bought Miller World.
That's right.
With so they can option anything that Mark Miller puts out.
I think that's probably already happened with the Magic Order.
Well, yeah. So I mean, he's writing stuff with
TV shows in mind.
Now, I guess, and I mean, if you look at a lot of his stuff was made into movies directly by Matthew Vaughn anyway. It's very translatable.
It is.
He's got a very easy way about his writing, and I think anybody, even if you've never read a comic in your life, you could come along, pick it up, and instantly get into it.
It's funny you say that. Again, this isn't me trying to name drop our comic in here, because it's not me trying to shoehorn it in.
Yeah, The Revenant.
The Revenants. When we did The Revenants, one of the first things that we did was, it's amazing you've said that. We read a lot of Mark Millar stuff because his stuff is so accessible. We wanted to make our comic accessible to people who didn't necessarily just read comics.
I completely forgot to bring up your comic.
There's nothing to bring up. Don't worry, we're waiting on a second one coming out anyway. So whenever that comes, we'll do another podcast.
You did that with the very talented John McFarlane, and John is. He works primarily in games at the minute, but
game design, really.
There's a lot of talk. I mean, we should really maybe get him on sometime, because I think John, he should be in the big leagues. His stuff is absolutely gorgeous. He should.
He's a quite big fella, so it might be you talking the whole time, Mark. But he is. John is one of the most talented artists we have in Northern Ireland. In fact, I would say in the world at the minute. And that's not me bigging up, because I love John the bits, but his stuff is out of this world. We were lucky to have him on board at the Revenants, but from that he's platformed on. He's jumped on and done things that are just unbelievable. Yeah, you see,
as you say, he's very quiet. He's a very modest fella, and trying to actually get him to talk. I mean, I get the impression that not that I can't talk for Ireland, because I can just sit and randomly ramble for it's not an issue for me, but I do get the feeling that if I do get John on, maybe we'll need to get you to prod him as well.
Or a few pints.
Or a few pints, yeah.
I might loosen him up a
bit. So, but I mean, absolutely. And The Revenant, if you're ever, where can people get The Revenant?
So the only place you can get it is still our store. One of the things that we were very, very... one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that anybody who comes into this shop had the ability to only purchase it here. We were going to put it online. We had talked about getting it put in the Diamond. There was lots of different avenues. We wanted to make it quite special, and we wanted to make it that anybody who came into the store could have a piece of the store to take away with them. And that's what the comic's all about,
And is that why you did it? Was it a way for people to connect to the store, and was it just a bit of...
There is. I mean, we have a lot of our business is made up from the tourist trade, which we love and we really appreciate. And a lot of the guys and girls who come in here would say, I love this store, I wish this store was in here, or there, or in America, or wherever it might be. And because of that, we thought, well, everybody loves that, which is lovely, but what can they take home with them that's a part of this store? And what better thing to take away is an actual comic book from a comic book store that is set in the comic book store, starring the two people who are going to serve them.
That's actually really interesting. I did not know that was your motivation. But now that I see that, it's a very clever... I mean, you can tell why you were a marketing manager. It's a clever piece of marketing.
It was a good way for us to do something we really wanted to do, but get it into the hands of people who wanted to take something with them.
Yeah, for sure.
It is accessible, because the defining factor for me was if my mum could read it, then I knew it would be fine. My mum had never read a comic book in her life. It was my dad brought us up, and the first time she read it, she followed all the panels in the right order, which some people get very confused about.
That's true.
So that was a good sign, and she laughed at the right places. So
that's not
it was a testament to the comic must be okay. If my mum laughed, well, there you are.
Yeah, you sure. Well, I've read it, and I can confirm that it was very well drawn, very funny, and very well written.
Thank you very much.
Great. Enjoyed it a lot. Well, listen, we're going to wrap things up now. I just want to say thanks very much to Aaron for coming on the podcast. We've had a great time talking to you, man, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. We'll find an excuse, come down and talk some more. In the meantime, this has been Considering Comics. If you want to drop us drop us some comments, get in touch. Love to hear from you, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, please comment below. I'd love to hear from you. You can follow me at Consider Comics on Twitter, and that's Consider_comics, and you can check out my own work with my artistic collaborator, very talented Ryan Brown, over at his website, ryanbrownart.com, where the first part of our free online webcomic, Esther the Relique, is available for free. Please enjoy, and if you like it or hate it, and you've got any
criticism or feedback, we would love to hear from you.